What's up YouTube, it's Sook me, everyone calls me Sook, and today I'm answering your most frequently asked questions about F15X5s and N55's. I get tons of questions on Instagram, especially from newer followers about the setup on the car in general and how to maintain them, so let's get right into it. Alright, question number one. I just got an F15X5, what should I do? Well, that's a really vague and loaded question, but my response is always going to be do the maintenance first, and then my next question is going to be what are your goals with the car? Even if you don't have particular goals, my recommendation is always going to be do the maintenance and then think about what you want to do, whether it's from performance or make it look good or what have you. But rule number one is always you're changing all your oil. That includes the engine oil, the differentials, the transfer case if you're X-Drive, and the transmission. Change all the fluids, all the filters, and then evaluate what you want to do next. The next question is actually kind of a two-parter, but it's going to be what intake and downpipe should I run on my N55 F15? If you've been following me for a while, you know that I've tested every intake option on the market for the F15 N55 cars, as well as I've had multiple downpipes on this car, and I'll always say that the best intake on the market for the N55 F15 is the Midnight Motorsports intake system, and you want to pair that with the FTP Motorsport turbo inlet, which is required to run that intake. If you're not looking to do the inlet, then just stick with the stock airbox with an AFE drop-in filter. The AFE Stage 2 intake, the BMS intake, the front mount intake that's available, other options on the market, those are all going to actually make your car run worse, and I have data to prove that it'll run worse, and I've actually got feedback from multiple people who have asked and then run those intakes, and they've gone ahead and told me that exactly what I told them would happen did happen. So intake, Midnight Motorsport, or put an AFE high flow drop-in filter in your stock airbox. Downpipe, if you want to run a countless setup, VRSF is the move. You know, it's cheap, it's affordable. If you live in a place where you need to pass emissions, you can get what I have, which is an Apex built catted downpipe, or another really good option on the market is Evolution Raceworks catted downpipe. Up next, we've got what suspension am I on? And that's going to be BC Racing coilovers with Swift springs. And the next question I get when I tell people that is what are the spring rates on them? I personally went with a 14K front, 12K rear spring rate because originally I wanted to slam this thing and not want it to squat as much or, have the shocks travel, and the linear spring helps with that. Now with me racing it, I probably wouldn't have gone as far as stiff as a spring. I would have done the factory spring rates, which I believe are 12K front and 10K rear. But if you're looking for a comfortable OEM plus like ride option, my recommendation will always be the Bilstein B8 shock with the Eibach spring combo. This only lowers the car about an inch, but for most people that's plenty, and it actually rides fucking great. The BC coilovers, if you're a lowered car guy, you'll know that, obviously coilovers are going to ride stiffer unless you dish out for the KWs. At the time, I didn't want to pay $3,500 for a set of KWs. I've been able to take my family across country on this setup, and while it's a bit stiffer, it's bearable. And once I tell people about my suspension specs, they then ask about the wheel specs. So these are 20-inch wheels, and they're using the factory 20-inch tire sizes because that makes tires easy to find and they make them affordable. And in addition, they are 20 by 10 ET10 up front and 20 by 11 ET3 in the rear. So factory sizes as well, right? 20 by 10 and 20 by 11, just like OEM wheels if they're a style 451 or a style 469. But I got the offsets just right on these, and they were built to spec. You've got room for a plus 10 in the front, and if you're running the sport flares on the back, you've got room for like a plus 3 in the rear. Moving on to the interior, I get asked a lot about how do you get Apple CarPlay into these cars. If you have a 2017 or a 2018 car, it very likely came with NBT Evo, which will allow you to enable CarPlay using the factory integration through the connected drive services. So you want to just go ahead and enable it through that, and then pay someone like Be My Remote to enable full screen CarPlay. If you have a pre-2017 car, then your move is going to be either to buy a full replacement screen to replace the factory unit, or you can buy something like an MMI box that'll plug in behind the dash and you'll keep the factory screen, and that'll still allow you to have CarPlay just with no touchscreen, which is how I actually personally use it. Even though I've got touchscreen capable screen in my car, I prefer using the rotary dial because it just gives me a sense of more control. The next most common interior question I get is what steering wheel will work in our cars. F15s and F85's are capable of using steering wheels that come out of 1 Series, 2 Series, 3 Series, and 4 Series cars. So before I got my Zestec wheel, I was actually running a wheel out of an F30, slightly smaller in diameter. I would estimate about 5 millimeters smaller in diameter, which is enough to really not notice. So I thought it was fine, but if you're looking for a steering wheel, any 1, 2, 3, or 4 series will fit. The 5, 6, and 7 series have different splines on the actual hub itself, so they won't actually work and it won't mount up correctly. All right, now I'm getting into the good stuff, and one of the other questions I get is what oil do I use and how often do I change it? Since I bought the car 5 years ago, I've been using Motul 8100 XS 5W40. That is BMW LL01 approved, so I've been using that, changing it every 5,000 miles if I'm on 93 octane, but since I've been on E85 mostly for the past couple of years, I've been changing it every 2,500 to 3,000 miles. The reason being that ethanol inherently kind of thins out the oil because of the condensation and the water that it holds, so you want to change the oil more frequently so it doesn't get too thin and then you inadvertently spin a bearing or something like that. And since we're talking about rod bearings, another question I get is, do I need to do the rod bearings on my N55? And before I get into it, I am not a mechanic. I am just someone who has experience owning a high power N55 that I've been racing for multiple years, and I'm only able to speak to my experience. And I will say that the answer to that question is not as easy as you think. There are several factors that you want to consider. The first one's going to be, what's the maintenance history on the car? Do you know if it had 5,000 mile oil changes? Did it have 10,000 mile oil changes? Was it an E-chassis car that had 15,000 mile oil changes as recommended by BMW? If it is, I highly recommend you do the rod bearings if you plan on tuning and pushing power in your car, whether it's to drive around just as a daily or if you're taking it to the racetrack. I would recommend changing the bearings in that scenario. The second thing you want to ask is, what do you plan on doing with the car? Do you plan on racing it? Do you plan on just driving it to work and home? Take the family out on the weekends? Me personally, I've been racing the car since 40,000 miles and I'm now at 92,000 miles. And when we had to drop the oil pan at 80K to replace not just the gasket, but the oil pan itself, because the drain plug got threaded, we did opt to put in ACL race bearings because of the fact that I race it. That question, the do you need to replace your rod bearings question, is very loaded, but it depends on how you're going to use the car, the maintenance history of the car, and really what you're willing to spend. Because if you're not doing this job yourself at home, it's a big job, especially on X-Drive cars. Those are all factors you need to take into consideration when thinking about if your car needs the rod bearings done on it. And the last question from this list of most frequently asked questions is, why didn't you just get an X5M? So a couple of reasons for that. One, in my opinion, BMW is known for its straight six engines, and that's where they shine. So I wanted to stick with that philosophy and opt for the straight six engine option for this car. The second one is that I wanted something reliable that I could take my family cross country in. I knew that I would be driving, from Kansas City to Detroit to Chicago to the East Coast, etc. And I wanted something that I knew would, not leave me stranded. And I'm fortunate to this day, the car has never left me stranded, even with the broken gearbox right now. That's why I opted for the N55 car. And also, that's just what I wanted. It's not, I shouldn't have to justify to you why I got what I wanted, but it's just what I wanted. So that's what I got. And I know I said that was my last question to answer, but I just wanted to provide one quick bit of feedback, and that's, I don't mind answering questions from people who ask, right? I like to think I'm a very helpful person and in general, and I provide info where I can. But what I've noticed is some people will just, rather than saying, hey, Sook, I've been following you for a while, I have a quick question, some people will just say, hey, I need your help, or hey, I have a question, and then never ask. And that's just not the way to go about it. There's a certain level of respect and courtesy you want to approach someone, especially a stranger you're asking a question about your car to help you and you're being kind of a dick about it. Like, come on now. So my word of advice would be just think about how you're approaching people, and I'm more than happy to help. I can provide you tons of examples on people I've helped get their cars running and stuff like that and running better and so on. But, and I don't mind helping, but it's just, please approach it the right way. With that said, that's everything for today's video. I wanted to put this out there because I'm get a lot of questions about this, and I figured it was just easier to point people here versus respond to hundreds of DMs and TikTok and Instagram. So I appreciate you watching as always. Thanks for taking the time to watch. Thanks for the support, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.